He appreciates me, Elena said, setting down her third glass of wine at our kitchen island. The designer handbag beside her elbow cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I recognized the brand from the magazines she left scattered around our house like expensive breadcrumbs. I nodded and took another bite of the takeout Chinese food I'd picked up on my way home from the office. Elena hadn't cooked in 3 months. She'd been too busy being appreciated. Gerard understands me, Ian. He gets what I bring to the table. She gestured with her manicured nails, fresh from the salon, I noticed. The wedding ring I'd saved 6 months to buy her caught the kitchen light. He values my intelligence, my social connections, my potential. That's nice, I said, reaching for the soy sauce. My property management business had been steady but unremarkable for 8 years. I helped people buy and sell houses in our affluent lakeside suburb outside Boston. Elena had always made it clear this wasn't enough for her tastes. Gerard Voss, she continued as if I hadn't heard the name 50 times in the past month. 70 years old and sharper than men half his age. 2 private jets, Ian, 2. He took me to Martha's Vineyard last weekend just because I mentioned I'd never been. I kept eating. The lo mein tasted like cardboard, but I wasn't really hungry anyway. I was calculating. Elena's new wardrobe, the jewelry that kept appearing, the mysterious business trips that never seemed to involve actual business, it all added up to one inevitable conclusion. You're having an affair, I said quietly. Elena laughed, the sound sharp and bright in our granite and stainless steel kitchen. An affair? Ian, that's so pedestrian. Gerard and I have a connection, an understanding. He appreciates what you've taken for granted for 12 years. She stood up and smoothed her dress. Another new one, I noted. Black, expensive, the kind of thing she wore to impress people who weren't me. I'm going out, she announced. Jared's hosting a private dinner for some investors. Real people, Ian. People who matter. After she left, I sat in the quiet kitchen and finished my Chinese food. Then, I opened my laptop and started researching divorce attorneys. The next morning, I called James Morrison, the best family lawyer in our area. His office was in a converted Victorian mansion downtown, the kind of place that charged by the hour and delivered results. Ian Mallory, I said when his secretary put me through. I need to discuss ending my marriage. I see, Morrison said. His voice carried the weight of experience and expensive education. Grounds? Adultery. She's not exactly hiding it. Assets? House, my business, some savings. She doesn't work, but she's been spending money we don't have on things we can't afford. Morrison scheduled me for the following Tuesday. I hung up and stared out my office window at the lake. Sailboats dotted the water like white triangles against the blue. Everything looked peaceful from a distance. My office manager, Kira, knocked on my doorframe. She was 45, practical, and had worked for me since I started the business. She could read my moods better than my wife could. You look like someone stole your lunch money, she said. Elena's having an affair with a billionaire. Kira raised an eyebrow. Gerard Voss. You know about him? Ian. Everyone knows about Gerard Voss. He's been appreciating local women for 20 years. His wife pretends not to notice as long as he keeps it discreet. His wife? Margaret Voss. Old Boston money, older than dirt, and meaner than a snake with a toothache. She's the one with the real power in that family. Jared just gets to play with his toys as long as he doesn't embarrass her publicly. I leaned back in my chair. Elena thinks she's trading up. Elena thinks a lot of things. Doesn't make them true. That evening, I found Elena in our bedroom, trying on jewelry I'd never seen before. Diamond earrings caught the light from our bedside lamps. Pretty, I said. Gerard bought them for me. He said they match my eyes. She turned to face me, the diamonds sparkling. He notices things like that. I'm sure he does. She studied my reflection in the vanity mirror. You're taking this well. Taking what well? My friendship with Gerard. Most husbands would be jealous. Most wives would call it what it is. Elena's smile faltered for just a moment. Then, she stood up and walked to our walk-in closet. I'm staying at the Marriott downtown tonight. Gerard's taking me to breakfast tomorrow, then we're flying to New York for the weekend. Have fun. She paused in the closet doorway. That's it? Have fun? What do you want me to say? I want you to fight for me, Ian. I want you to show me that you care about losing me. I looked at her standing there in her expensive dress with her expensive jewelry, waiting for me to beg her to stay. 12 years of marriage, and she still didn't understand me at all. I'm not going to compete with a 70-year-old billionaire, Elena. If that's what you want, then you've already made your choice. She stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed her overnight bag and left. I listened to her car pull out of our driveway. Then I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. Bank statements, credit card bills, photographs of her new possessions. Morrison would want evidence, and I intended to give him plenty. Elena's transformation accelerated over the next month. She moved through our house like a celebrity preparing for a red carpet event, always dressed for someone else's approval, always checking her phone for messages from Gerard. He's taking me to the Beacon Hill Charity Gala next Friday, she announced one morning, modeling a gown that probably cost more than my monthly business insurance. All the important people will be there. I was reading the newspaper and drinking coffee from my favorite mug, a Father's Day gift from Elena's sister's kids 3 years ago. We'd never had children of our own. Elena always said we weren't ready, weren't established enough, didn't have the right foundation. Looking back, I think she was waiting for someone better to have them with. That's the same gala where his wife will be, I said without looking up from the sports section. Elena's laugh sounded forced. Margaret understands the arrangement. Jared explained everything to her years ago. She has her interests, he has his. Uh-huh. You don't believe me. I don't care enough to believe or disbelieve you. That was a lie, of course. I cared enough to have hired a private investigator. Not for the divorce. Elena's affair was obvious enough that I didn't need professional confirmation. But I wanted to understand exactly what kind of situation she was walking into. Knowledge was power, and I had a feeling Elena was going to need all the help she could get, even if she didn't want it from me. The investigator, a former police detective named Rick Paulson, called me that afternoon. Your wife's boyfriend has a pattern, he said without preamble. Young women, always married, always from good families with social connections. He wines them, dines them, shows them off for 6 months to a year, then moves on. His wife tolerates it because the women never last long enough to become a real threat. What happens to them afterward? Most of them go back to their husbands with their tails between their legs. The smart ones, anyway. The ones who push too hard? Paulson paused. Let's just say Margaret Voss has excellent attorneys. That Friday night, I drove past the Beacon Hill Hotel, where the charity gala was being held. Elena's picture was already online. Society photographers loved Gerard Voss, and by extension, they loved whoever he brought to public events. She looked radiant in the photos, her hand resting possessively on Gerard's arm as he introduced her to Boston's elite. I went home and continued packing her belongings. She'd been staying at hotels more often than not, but she hadn't officially moved out yet. I was helping the process along. Saturday morning, Elena burst through our front door like a hurricane in designer heels. Did you see the pictures? She demanded, waving her phone at me. The Globe's Society page, the Herald, even Boston Magazine online. Gerard introduced me as his dear friend. Do you understand what that means? I was sitting at our kitchen table, drinking coffee, and reading Morrison's preliminary divorce filing. The papers were neat, thorough, and devastating in their simplicity. It means you're his current mistress, I said. It means I'm part of his world now. His real world, Ian, not this. She gestured around our kitchen with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. This suburban nothing. This suburban nothing is half yours. Or it was. Elena's smile faltered. What do you mean, was? I slid the divorce papers across the table. I filed last week. You're being served on Monday, but I thought you should know. She stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. You can't be serious. Adultery's still grounds for divorce in Massachusetts. Your boyfriend's not as discreet as he thinks he is. Jared will take care of me. He's already talking about setting me up in a proper apartment, maybe a place on Newberry Street. He appreciates what I bring to his life. I'm sure he does. The question is what his wife appreciates. Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went pale. Problem? I asked. It's It's from Margaret Voss's assistant. She wants to meet with me Monday morning. I nodded and took another sip of my coffee. That should be interesting. Elena spent the weekend pacing around our house like a caged animal. She called Gerard repeatedly, but he was apparently unreachable at his estate in the Hamptons. His assistant was polite but unhelpful. Mrs. Voss's assistant, however, confirmed the Monday morning appointment with crisp efficiency. Monday morning, Elena dressed like she was going to a job interview at the Supreme Court. Conservative suit, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back in a style that made her look younger and less threatening. "Wish me luck," she said as she headed for the door. "You'll need it," I replied. She came home 3 hours later, looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her carefully applied makeup was smudged, and her hands were shaking as she poured herself a glass of wine. "How did it go?" I asked. "She offered me money." "How much?" $50,000 to disappear from Gerard's life. Permanently. I whistled low. "That's generous." I told her no, obviously. I told her Gerard and I have something real, something she could never understand. What did she say to that? Elena's laugh was bitter. She said I wasn't the first woman to tell her that, and I wouldn't be the last. Then she showed me a file. What kind of file? Pictures, documents. Every woman Gerard's been involved with for the past 15 years. What happened to them, where they ended up, how much it cost to make them go away. Elena finished her wine and poured another glass. Some of them took the money. The ones who didn't? What happened to the ones who didn't? Legal problems, tax audits, harassment lawsuits. One woman lost her house, another lost custody of her children. Margaret Voss doesn't just make problems disappear, Ian. She makes people disappear. I studied my wife's face. For the first time in months, she looked genuinely frightened. "Maybe you should take the money," I said. Elena's fear transformed into anger in an instant. "I'm not taking her money. Gerard loves me. He's going to leave her." "Elena, he's going to leave her, and we're going to be together. Really together. She's just trying to scare me because she knows she's losing him." I didn't argue. There was no point. Elena had made her choice, and now she was going to live with the consequences. That night, I called Morrison and told him to accelerate the divorce proceedings. Something told me Elena was going to need those papers finalized sooner rather than later. The first sign that Elena's fairy tale was cracking came 2 weeks later, when Gerard's usual Thursday night dinner invitation failed to materialize. Elena spent the evening calling his personal assistant, his office, even the front desk at his downtown hotel. Everyone was polite, professional, and completely unhelpful. "He's probably just busy," she told me, pacing around our living room in a cocktail dress she'd bought specifically for their weekly dinners. "He's got business interests all over the world. Sometimes things come up." "I'm sure that's it," I said, not looking up from the property management contracts I was reviewing. Friday came and went without word from Gerard. Saturday, Elena drove to his Beacon Hill townhouse and rang the doorbell for 20 minutes. The housekeeper finally answered and informed her that Mr. Voss was traveling and wouldn't be back for several weeks. "Where did he go?" Elena demanded. "I'm not at liberty to say, ma'am." Elena came home furious and desperate in equal measure. She'd been living in hotels for the past month, charging everything to credit cards that were already stretched to their limits. The bills were piling up, and Gerard's financial support had apparently evaporated along with his presence. "I need to access our joint accounts," she told me Sunday morning. "What joint accounts?" "Our savings, the money market account, the emergency fund." I looked up from my newspaper. Those accounts were frozen when I filed for divorce. Standard procedure. Elena's face went white. "You can't do that." "Actually, I can. Morrison was very thorough." "But I need money, Ian. I have expenses." "Get a job." She stared at me like I'd suggested she start selling her organs. "A job? I haven't worked in 5 years." "Then you'd better update your resume." That afternoon, Elena swallowed her pride and called her best friend Margot for help. Margot had been her partner in social climbing for years, always ready with gossip and moral support for Elena's various schemes and adventures. I could hear Elena's side of the conversation from my home office. "She offered me money to disappear. No, I didn't take it. Jared's just traveling. He'll be back." I know how it looks, but this is different. Can you help me out? Just until he gets back? The conversation ended abruptly. I heard Elena slam her phone down, then the sound of her heels clicking across our hardwood floors. Problem? I asked when she appeared in my doorway. Margot's being ridiculous. She thinks I should take Margaret's money and come crawling back to you. Smart woman. She's a coward. They're all cowards. Elena's voice was rising, taking on the shrill edge it got when she felt cornered. None of them understand what Gerard and I have. None of them have ever had a man appreciate them the way he appreciates me. Elena, I said gently, when was the last time you actually spoke to Gerard? 2 weeks ago. But that doesn't mean anything. He's a busy man. His assistant won't return your calls. His housekeeper won't tell you where he is. His wife offered you money to disappear. What do you think is happening here? Elena's composure finally cracked. He loves me. He told me he loved me. I'm sure he did. You don't believe me? I believe he told you what you wanted to hear. That's what men like Gerard Voss do. She stood in my doorway for a long moment, her expensive dress wrinkled, her makeup smudged, her confidence finally showing cracks. Then she turned and walked away. That evening, I found her in our bedroom, going through jewelry boxes and pulling out pieces I recognized, gifts from Gerard that she'd been flaunting for months. What are you doing? I asked. I'm going to sell these, just temporarily, until Gerard gets back. I picked up a diamond bracelet that probably cost more than my car. You sure you want to do that? I don't have a choice. I need money. You could get a job. Doing what? I've been out of the workforce for 5 years. My last job was in marketing, and that industry's completely changed. You could start small. Retail, maybe, or office work. Elena laughed bitterly. You'd love that, wouldn't you? Seeing me behind a counter somewhere, serving people who used to respect me. I'd love to see you supporting yourself instead of depending on married men. She threw the bracelet back in its box. This is temporary, Ian. Gerard's going to come back. And when he does, he's going to make Margaret understand that I'm not going anywhere. I didn't argue. There was no point. Elena was going to have to learn the truth about Gerard Voss the hard way. The next morning, I called Rick Paulson, my private investigator. Any word on Gerard's whereabouts? I asked. He's in Switzerland. Has been for 2 weeks. His wife joined him there last Friday. Business trip? Anniversary trip. 45 years of marriage. They do the same thing every year. 3 weeks in Gstaad, complete media blackout, no outside contact. Does Elena know this? I doubt it. Gerard's not the type to share his personal calendar with his mistresses. After I hung up, I sat in my office and stared out at the lake. Elena was upstairs, probably still going through her jewelry collection, trying to figure out which pieces would bring the most money. She had no idea that her billionaire boyfriend was celebrating his wedding anniversary in the Swiss Alps, or that his wife had probably planned this trip specifically to coincide with Elena's growing desperation. Margaret Voss was playing chess, while Elena was playing checkers. And I was starting to understand that this whole situation was far more orchestrated than I'd initially realized. That afternoon, I drove to Morrison's office for a progress update on our divorce proceedings. How's your wife handling this separation? He asked. About as well as you'd expect. She's convinced her boyfriend is going to rescue her. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Gerard Voss? You know him. I know his wife. Margaret Voss has been a client of this firm for 20 years. She's formidable. Elena met with her a few weeks ago. I heard. Margaret mentioned it. Morrison leaned back in his leather chair. Your wife turned down a very generous settlement offer. Elena thinks she's going to get something better from Gerard. That's unfortunate. Margaret Voss doesn't make the same offer twice. I left Morrison's office with a growing sense that Elena had stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple affair. Margaret Voss wasn't just a wealthy woman protecting her marriage. She was a predator who'd been dealing with women like Elena for decades. And Elena had just declared war on her. Gerard returned from Switzerland on a Tuesday. Elena found out because she'd been obsessively checking the society pages, and his picture appeared in the Herald's business section. A photo of him and Margaret at Logan Airport, looking tanned and happy after their anniversary trip. Elena called his office immediately. His assistant put her on hold for 15 minutes, then came back with a message. Mr. Voss was unavailable and would remain so indefinitely. What does that mean? Indefinitely, Elena demanded. I'm not at liberty to elaborate, ma'am. I need to speak with him. It's important. I'll make note of your call. The line went silent. Elena stared at her phone like it had betrayed her personally. That afternoon, she drove to Gerard's Beacon Hill townhouse and rang the doorbell until the housekeeper threatened to call the police. She tried his downtown office building, but security wouldn't let her pass the lobby. She even went to his country club, but they informed her that her guest privileges had been revoked. She came home that evening looking defeated for the first time since this whole mess started. He's avoiding me, she said, collapsing into one of our living room chairs. Yes, he is. But why? We had something real, Ian. It wasn't just some casual fling. I looked at my wife, really looked at her. Her designer clothes couldn't hide the stress lines around her eyes, or the way her hands shook when she thought I wasn't watching. She'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. Elena, I said carefully, what did you think was going to happen? Did you really believe a 70-year-old billionaire was going to leave his wife of 45 years for you? He said he loved me. I'm sure he did, in the moment. You think I'm naive. I think you're human. Gerard Voss is very good at making women feel special. He's had a lot of practice. Elena's phone buzzed. She grabbed it eagerly, then her face fell. What is it? I asked. My credit card was declined at the grocery store. She looked up at me with something approaching panic. How is that possible? You've been living beyond your means for months. The bills were bound to catch up eventually. But Gerard's not paying your bills anymore, if he ever was. Elena spent the next hour on the phone with credit card companies, trying to understand how her financial situation had deteriorated so quickly. The answers weren't encouraging. She owed nearly $40,000 across 6 different cards, and her minimum monthly payments were more than she could possibly manage without income. I need a lawyer, she said after hanging up from her final call. You need a job. I need to sue Gerard for support. He made promises, Ian. He led me to believe we had a future together. What kind of promises? Do you have anything in writing? Elena's silence was answer enough. The next morning, she called 3 different attorneys. The first one laughed at her. The second one explained that verbal promises from married men weren't legally binding. The third one agreed to meet with her, but only after she paid a $5,000 retainer. I don't have $5,000, Elena told me. Then you don't have a lawyer. That afternoon, desperation drove her to do something I hadn't expected. She applied for a job. The position was at an upscale boutique downtown, selling clothes to the same social circle she'd been trying to impress for months. She came home from the interview looking humiliated. They offered me the job, she said. That's good news. $12 an hour, Ian, $12. Do you know what I used to make in marketing? That was 5 years ago. I can't live on $12 an hour. You can't live on $0 an hour either. Elena took the job. Her first day was a disaster. She lasted 4 hours before walking out after a customer she recognized from one of Gerard's parties treated her like hired help. She acted like she didn't even know me, Elena complained. Last month, we were chatting at a charity luncheon like equals. Today, she snapped her fingers at me and demanded I find her size in a different color. That's retail. That's humiliation. Elena's downward spiral accelerated over the next week. Her hotel asked her to settle her outstanding bill or vacate the premises. Her car was repossessed while she was having lunch with Margot. Their first meeting in weeks, and apparently their last, based on the shouting match I could hear through Elena's phone. When Margot called to tell her what she really thought about the whole Gerard situation. She called me delusional, Elena reported. She said I was embarrassing myself and everyone who knows me. Maybe she has a point. Whose side are you on? I'm on the side of reality. And reality is that you're broke, unemployed, and homeless. Gerard's not coming to rescue you, Elena. His wife made sure of that. Elena stared at me with something approaching hatred. You're enjoying this. I'm not enjoying watching you destroy yourself. You could help me. You could drop the divorce, let me come home, give me time to figure this out. So you can wait for the next Gerard to come along? so I can get back on my feet. I studied my wife's face. She was offering me a truce, not a reconciliation, a temporary ceasefire, while she regrouped and planned her next escape. No, I said, no. You made your choice, Elena. You chose Gerard over our marriage. The fact that Gerard didn't choose you back doesn't make me your consolation prize. Elena's composure finally shattered completely. I have nowhere to go, Ian. No money, no job, no friends. What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to figure it out, the same way everyone else does, when their life falls apart. I'm your wife. You're my soon-to-be ex-wife. There's a difference. That night, Elena packed her remaining belongings and left our house for the last time. She didn't tell me where she was going, and I didn't ask. 2 days later, Kira told me she'd heard through the local gossip network that Elena was staying at a motel near the highway, paying by the week with money she'd gotten from selling her jewelry. You could still help her, Kira said. She wouldn't accept help from me, and I wouldn't offer it. That's cold, even for you. She wanted appreciation, Kira. Now she's getting it, just not the kind she expected. Elena's attempt at a comeback began 3 weeks later, when she somehow managed to get an invitation to the annual Lakeside Community Foundation Gala, the biggest social event of the fall season. I found out because my neighbor, Ivy, mentioned seeing Elena's name on the guest list. How did she manage that? I asked. Those invitations cost $500 each. Word is she's volunteering, Ivy said, helping with registration, coat check, that sort of thing. Ah, so she's working the event, not attending it. Technically, but she's hoping to run into Gerard there. Everyone knows he's a major donor. The gala was held at the Lakeside Country Club, the same venue where Elena and I had attended dozens of events over the years as paying guests. Now she was there as hired help, checking coats and handing out name tags to people who used to consider her a social equal. I bought a ticket. I arrived at 7:30, fashionably late, and curious to see how Elena's grand plan was working out. She was stationed at the registration table, wearing a black dress that I recognized as one of her pre-Gerard outfits, elegant but not flashy, appropriate for someone trying to blend into the background. She looked up when I approached the table, and her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, embarrassment, anger, and finally resignation. "Ian," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "I didn't know you were coming. Last-minute decision. You look well." That was a lie. Elena looked tired, thin, and older than her 38 years. The stress of the past few months had taken a visible toll. "Thank you," she said, handing me a name tag. "Enjoy the evening." I pinned the tag to my jacket and walked into the main ballroom. The usual crowd was there: doctors, lawyers, business owners, old money families who'd been attending these events for generations. I recognized most of the faces, though I noticed several people, pointedly not recognizing Elena, when they passed the registration table. Gerard arrived at 8 o'clock with Margaret on his arm. They made a striking couple, him distinguished in his custom tuxedo, her regal in midnight blue silk that probably cost more than most people's cars. They moved through the crowd like royalty, accepting greetings and compliments with practiced grace. Elena watched them from her post at the registration table. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how to engineer a casual encounter that wouldn't look desperate or pathetic. She got her chance during the cocktail hour, when Gerard stepped away from his table to speak with the foundation's board chairman. Elena abandoned her post and intercepted him near the bar. I was close enough to hear their conversation. "Gerard," she said, touching his arm lightly, "I've been trying to reach you." He turned, and his expression was politely blank, the look of a man encountering a vaguely familiar stranger. "Elena, how nice to see you. We need to talk. There are things we need to discuss, plans we made." "I'm afraid you're mistaken," Gerard said smoothly. "We have nothing to discuss." "But Gerard, what we had was a pleasant diversion, nothing more." Elena's voice rose slightly. "You said you loved me." Several nearby conversations stopped. People began to stare. Gerard's smile never wavered, but his eyes went cold. "I'm afraid you misunderstood the nature of our friendship. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to return to my wife." He walked away, leaving Elena standing alone by the bar, with dozens of people watching her humiliation. The whispers started immediately, a low buzz of gossip and speculation that followed her as she made her way back to the registration table. But Elena wasn't done. 20 minutes later, during the dinner service, she approached Gerard's table directly. Margaret was there, along with 6 other prominent couples, all of whom looked up in surprise as Elena inserted herself into their private conversation. "Jared," Elena said, her voice carrying across the ballroom, "I know you don't want to make a scene, but we really need to talk. About us. About our future." The entire ballroom went quiet. 500 people stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped pretending they weren't watching the drama unfold at table 1. Margaret Voss looked up at Elena with the expression of someone examining an interesting but ultimately insignificant insect. "Miss," Margaret said, her voice cultured and deadly calm. "Mrs. Mallory," Elena corrected. "Elena Mallory." "Miss Mallory," Margaret continued, making it clear that Elena's marital status was irrelevant to her. "I believe you're confused about your role here this evening. You're working, are you not?" "I'm volunteering, but that's not the point. Jared and you have no relationship whatsoever," Margaret said, rising from her chair. "You were a temporary diversion, nothing more. And now you're making a spectacle of yourself in front of people who will remember this moment for years to come." Elena's face flushed red. "He told me he loved me. He made promises." "I'm sure he did. My husband has always been generous with his affections and careless with his words. But surely you didn't believe that a man of his position would leave his wife of 45 years for someone like you?" The insult hung in the air, like a physical presence. Elena looked around the ballroom, finally seeming to realize that every person there was watching her public humiliation, with a mixture of fascination and disgust. "Someone like me?" she repeated. "Someone disposable," Margaret said simply. Elena slapped her. The sound echoed through the silent ballroom like a gunshot. Margaret touched her cheek calmly, then nodded to someone behind Elena. 2 security guards appeared and escorted Elena from the building, while 500 people watched in stunned silence. I stayed until